Do you want a new story for your life? Most of us want to shift the stories in our lives, but the question remains, how? Today we're hearing from tennis master, corporate coach, and author of Live the Best Story of Your Life, A World Champion's Guide to Lasting Change, Bob Litwin. After the tragic loss of his wife and several invasive surgeries, Bob was feeling stuck and depressed. Never one to sit out on a match, Bob changed his own story and began living in the best way possible every day. His experiences inspired his audiobook, Live the Best Story of Your Life, which includes 33 lessons on how to change your life for the better, starting today. In today's conversation, he discusses his new audiobook, his theory of how we can all change our lives more easily and more permanently than we imagine, and some tips for painless and almost instantaneous change. Live the Best Story of Your Life, A World Champion's Guide to Lasting Change, is published by Wetware Media and can be purchased from any major online audiobook retailer. If you'd like more information, please visit wetwaremedia.com. That's wetwaremedia.com.
So my story is that I was a tennis teaching pro on Long Island, and many, many years ago, like in the 1970s, I knew that I needed to differentiate myself, that people were doing things the same way, and I had a lot of interest in Eastern philosophy from my days in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I went to the University of Michigan. And I found that I didn't really know that much about tennis per se. And I was really making a lot of things up as far as how to hit a ball and where to hit a ball, because there was no real science to it. What I found was that people weren't really getting better. So I started to notice that people were improving when I would talk to them about other things, more softer skills like relaxing under pressure or identifying pressure, letting go of bad results or even good results quickly, being kind to oneself, speaking positively to oneself, which in the early 1970s was still very new. Now it's pretty much sports psychology 101, but there wasn't even sports psychology at the time. And I started to build my own teaching model around these comments that I was making that seemed to help people do better, or at least to play at the skill level that they already had. And trying to increase their skill level wasn't really changing. So for many years, I was doing that. And at a certain point, I realized that I could really do that as well with people playing other sports, even sports of which I had minimal knowledge. So I started working with golfers and worked on the same thing. What's going on in between your shots? What's going on in your head, in between your ears? Over time, I started to run seminars in how to deepen focus. Came up with a business called the Focused Game Seminars. People who came to it turned out to be people of all walks of life, businessmen, businesswomen, housewives, moms, whatever. And they were looking for an edge in whatever sport or whatever they were doing in their extracurricular activities. And a lot of the business people were saying, like, this is a lot like business stuff. Do you ever work in businesses? And I was like, no. I only work in sports. But eventually I got sort of dragged into a couple of businesses, and I was giving some, at that time I would call mental coaching to people that were felt they wanted an edge. They just wanted a little bit more than just their basic understanding of how to run a business. And this continued over time until about 15 years ago, when I was asked by a hedge fund, a portfolio manager, if I knew anybody who coached hedge funds. And I was like, well, no, I don't know. That would be your business. You know who coaches people how to invest. No, not how to invest, but how to keep your mental game together when in the midst of the high power pressure situations of hedge fund investing. I said, I don't really know anybody. They said, well, what about you? No, I only do sports. And they encouraged me to come in and try it. I made a deal with them where I said, let me try it for a couple of months and see. You try me, I'll try you. I went in on day one and I thought, oh my God, this is really what I want to do. I can make a difference here. That's really what I've been doing over the last 15, 16 years. So I basically left sports coaching, although I still work with athletes in their mental training, to work in the business world. Then a few years ago, I lost my wife to cancer. And after she died, after this wonderful 30-year relationship that we had, I was really feeling down and out. A couple of things had gone on for me. One was that as a competitive tennis player, which I was, I had reached number one in the world in the 55 and over, even though I was a late starter. I had 2 hip surgeries, one of which failed. And I was basically told, you won't be able to play tennis again. And that was right after my wife had passed away. So there I was feeling, as an optimistic person, I was not feeling very optimistic. And I decided, I can't do this. I can't get through this. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm getting old. I'm going to be alone. And I write about that in the book. And I realized I had a terrible story that I was telling myself. And I decided to flip the story to a better story, not one of who I actually was or where I was in my life, but one that could possibly inspire me to basically go forward, to find a better way to live my life rather than to just kind of quit. And part of that process that I was using also was to start writing a book. I really do believe that we can make big changes, and they're not that difficult. So that's my background. That's why I'm here right now. And I sit in my office and I look at the Rocky Mountains and I think every day I'm living the very best story of my life. I really believe that all of us have narratives or I use the word stories that we have come to where we are in our lives with. And many of those stories were formed many, many, many years ago. They might have been things that our parents or our priest or rabbi or our coaches or our teachers or siblings or grandparents or neighbors would tell us. And being young, we would believe these stories. They might be a story of like, oh, you're so undisciplined. And that would be planted in my brain. And I would grow up many years later still thinking, I have no discipline. A story like that could limit me in many ways. So the power of the narrative is that it can keep you from flying, or a better narrative can help you fly and help you go beyond where you think you are. When I do talks about this, people say, oh, you're talking about like limiting self-beliefs. Okay, yes. Or, not having good goals. Okay. But I think those words have been overused and they've gotten a little bit old and people don't really get moved by them. There's something about stories, that word, that makes it easier for people to switch a story. An example would be one of my clients, very, very, very successful person. He's in his 70s. I've been coaching him for a few months, and he really doesn't take advantage of the coaching experience that much. And one day he said to me, well, I'm very closed. I've never been an open person, and I'm not transparent. It's not that easy for me to be transparent. And I said, okay, well, that's your story. How does that story work for you? Well, it works okay. I said, have you ever been transparent? No. So I said, here's what you can do. I mean, I'm not judging that at all. If it works for you, that's fine. But maybe consider the possibility of writing a different story, just one line. And that line can be the opposite. It would be, I'm transparent. I speak my truth. You can write it down and not have to do anything with it. You can look at it on a piece of paper and say, no, I don't want to do this. I don't like it. I don't want to do it. Or you can just have it on a piece of paper and you can kind of consider it during the day. And maybe during the day, you might have an experience. You might go to Starbucks and not get enough vanilla as you requested. Instead of walking out of Starbucks and saying, I'm never going back to that Starbucks, not being transparent, maybe you can say, hey, I didn't get enough vanilla. That's being transparent. You can try it. And if you don't like it, you can scoot back to what you were before. But you have nothing to lose by flipping your narrative, flipping your story into a better story that might allow you to expand yourself in some way. To me, it's extraordinary how, I mean, I love the word powerful, I guess, but how simple it is. It's so simple to take a story that is not working. And it's not that hard to know what stories don't work. People will say like, well, I'm this way because of this or that or the other thing. It's like, I'm always late, or I'm impatient, or I don't know, I'm just like stressed all the time. People say this stuff all the time. They're very good at identifying what's not working for them. And in my work or in the book, I'm saying like, is that story working for you? If it is, good, go forward. But if it's not working for you, what's the risk? What do you have to lose by flipping a story and experimenting? And even beyond that is the idea of, well, people say, well, like, I'm not that person though. Okay, that's fine. But during the day, you have opportunities to practice in small ways. You may not have to practice in the biggest way. If what you're working on is being more patient, you can, when you're waiting for the elevator, practice not pushing the button more than once. That's a way to practice patience in a small way. It's like a 1 pound weight. All throughout the day, we have opportunities to practice new stories in incremental small ways. And then we get better, just like strengthening a muscle. I believe change is easy and fun and exciting and worth getting up for every single day. And the story that we've been told about change has not been a good story, which is it's painful, it's hard, it never lasts. What's painful about change? It's not painful. It's exciting. It's exhilarating. It allows us to go way beyond where we've ever been. On a personal level, I can say that every day I want to be a little bit better. And by me flipping stories, every day in my life is exciting. Why should people listen to this book? Because there's an opportunity for them to get out of places that aren't working for them, to not stay limited. And I think that certainly in sports we see this. When people stop getting better, they lose the passion for the game. They sort of go into this state of flattening out. And then they don't want to go out and do the work anymore. But if part of your mission in life is to continue to grow and continue to improve, there's a passion to every single day. And I think that this book is it is a really simple approach to change. And that's the biggest feedback that I get that's so exciting. People will write me and say, is it really this easy? And I say, yes. People used to say, well, it's easy for you. And I would say, yes, but it can be easy for you too. So I think the book is a really simple guidebook for growing. I don't judge people who don't want to grow, but if they're in my presence, I'm always encouraging them to grow. There's no shortage of tips out there. There are so many great tips, whether it's be positive or meditate or lie on the floor or get up and walk around, or it's like eat well, exercise, no shortage of tips. My book is different because what it's saying to people is, who do you need to be? Who's the person that you need to be? What shift can you make so that you can accomplish these tips? Once you practice a tip enough, it folds into who you are. So in some sense, I think that this book can be like the self-help book for self-help books. I support all self-help books. I love everything that's in most of them, but I feel what's missing is, how do you get people to change enough so that they say, I'm committed to personal change, or I do the work, or I'm a master of self-discipline, which is what's required in order to do what's in these wonderful self-help books that are out there. So yes, my book is a self-help book in that way. You do have to like take a look in the mirror and say like, who am I? What's my story that's keeping me from accomplishing certain things? That's the one part of the self-helping you need to do with my book. Look in the mirror. And as soon as you start to identify what it is about you, not something deep, something surface, I don't follow through. I just don't persist. I don't finish things. That's the beginning of accomplishing change. always start off with like, what is your current story that's keeping you from being who you really would like to be? In the best world, who could you be? And why not? What's going on? Not therapy, not, well, when I was young, this or that or the other thing, but today. It would be a good idea for somebody to ask themselves, am I getting what I want in my life? Am I where I want to be in my life? Are there things about me that I'm not crazy about, that I don't really tell anybody else about? And jot a few of them down and see if any of them are something that you'd like to attempt to shift. There's no risk. There's no total commitment that just because you're writing down, gee, I'm so negative, that you have to do anything about it. Whatever it happens to be, write it down. Start there, take a look at it. Don't get despondent about it. Look at it and say, could I take this on? And if the answer is, I'd like to take it on, well, absolutely. Then flip the story and then put that old story in the rearview mirror. You don't need to go there anymore. You may be that way, but stop talking about that and start talking about your new story. Share it with the world. Share it with a partner. Share it with a colleague. Share it with somebody that's going to listen and say, guess what? There's a new me in town. Get ready. I'm on my way. And that's the way to get started. For me, when I was lying in bed after like losing my wife and being told I wouldn't play tennis again, I said, I need a new story. Let me write it and see what happens. And by the way, from that new story, as I said, I got remarried, which I didn't think was going to happen. And I ended up becoming #1 in the country again in tennis, even though I was never supposed to play again. I wrote the book because I wanted to help people. When I first spoke to my publisher, they said, what do you want? And I said, I just want to create more influence. I have influence with the people that I'm in front of, but I'd like to be able to get it out there more. I want to make a difference in the world. Even when it comes to the sale of the book, I'm certainly happy to make sales. That's really good, and I know it's great for my publisher, and it's okay for me too. But more than anything, the feeling that I get back when somebody emails me and says, you've helped me change my life, that fills my bucket more than anything else. It's a wonderful feeling at this point in my life to be less concerned about what I'm getting financially and more concerned about what I get spiritually and emotionally from this work. And that's been huge for me. A big change in my story.
Live the Best Story of Your Life, a World Champion's Guide to Lasting Change, is published by Wetware Media and can be purchased from any major online audiobook retailer. If you'd like more information, please visit wetwaremedia.com. That's WETWAREMEDIA.com.